Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of BacklogBusters, where I'm busting out my gaming backlog one video at a time and letting you know if after all these years these games are worth playing today. In this episode, we'll be grown into a life of war, and we'll eventually betray our Jedi generals at the command of the first galactic emperor in Star Wars Republic Commando. I've always heard great things about Republic Commando. I remember reading about it in gaming magazines at the time, it being this gritty first-person version of Star Wars, but I think it must have come out at the wrong time for me when it released in 2005, right before Episode 3. The height of Star Wars excitement for me as a kid, as far as I can remember, was from the late 90s to the early 2000s, having been shown the original trilogy as a child and growing up with the prequel movies coming out. But while I watched episodes 1, 2, and the original trilogy dozens of times on VHS, I only remember watching episode 3 once in theaters, maybe once at home on DVD. My brother and I had tons of plastic lightsabers, played hours of multiplayer in Star Wars Clone Wars, spent way too much time never figuring out how to actually get past the sand monster in Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. Still haven't figured that out, by the way, so maybe that's something to go back to. And also getting burnt out trying to collect every peg and golden brick in LEGO Star Wars' first couple levels, rather than just playing through the levels like normal people. But I'm not sure why in 2005 we didn't pick up the hottest new Star Wars game at the time, so after 17 years I'm finally busting it off my backlog. Star Wars Republic Commando was developed and published by LucasArts, who were founded in 1982 by George Lucas, surprise, at the time known as Lucasfilm Games, which started with two games that were developed for Atari in 1984. Ball Blazer and Rescue on Fractalis. After several different games and publishers after that, Lucasfilm Games themselves developed and published Maniac Mansion on October 5th, 1987 for the Amiga, Apple II, Atari ST, Commodore 64, MS-DOS, and the Nintendo Entertainment System. Maniac Mansion was a point-and-click adventure game which kicked off a wave of similar games from Lucasfilm that I always hear mentioned in very high regard, like the Secret of Monkey Island series, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis,
possibly an ancient mess.
Day of the Tentacle,
Aha! A secret passage. This is all too easy.
The Dig,
Low here. Come on out, kids. The water's fine.
and Grim Fandango.
Hey, service!
Hey, who the...
Oh, sorry, sir. I didn't expect... Sales agents usually don't come over to this part of the garage.
Then in 1990, Lucasfilm Games was rebranded as LucasArts for both the development and publishing sides. Followed that in 1992, the license to make Star Wars games, which had been held by another company for years, came back to LucasArts, and they kicked off their own Star Wars games that were developed internally, such as the X-Wing series, the Dark Forces series, and Shadows of the Empire. I mostly remember LucasArts from their Star Wars games, but they have a long history of actually developing and publishing both Star Wars and non-Star Wars stuff, which you might not immediately think of, like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Gladius, LucasArts released their last game in 2010, with the release of The Force Unleashed 2, then closed its doors sadly in 2013, shortly after being acquired by Disney. With Lucasfilm Games being revived in 2021 actually, but only to license Lucasfilm properties, no longer to be a development house. But 7 years before they would shut their doors, LucasArts released Star Wars Republic Commando on February 28th, 2005. Meant to fit between Episode 2 and Episode 3's story, with Episode 3 coming a few months after this game on May 19th, 2005. The game is played in first person, but has a big focus on commanding your squad of troopers. You play as the boss, and have a squad of 3, which is made up of 6-2, or Scorch, 4-0, Fixer, and 0-7, Sev, who you'll be giving orders to throughout the game. I don't have a physical copy around to read the back of the box setup, but let's just go with what the Steam store listing says to give us some play setting. Chaos has erupted throughout the galaxy. As a leader of an elite squad of Republic Commandos, your mission is to infiltrate, dominate, and ultimately annihilate the enemy. Your squad will follow your orders and your lead, working together as a team instinctively, intelligently, instantly. You are their leader, they are your weapon. It touts this innovative squad control system with intuitive and smart squad commandos. The simple touch of one button easily controls your squad to perform complex commands and strategic maneuvers. Multiple gaming modes. Choose the single-player option and command a squad of 4 that you can dispatch at your will. Or choose the multiplayer option and play with up to 16 players online in different multiplayer modes. Prelude to Episode 3. Encounter new vehicles, locations, and enemies from the upcoming film. That's just a short recap of LucasArts' long history, which we don't have much more time to go into today, and some place setting for Republic Commando. So with that out of the way, let's start talking about what I liked and disliked about this game. Listen, I love to play as a Jedi as much as the next person, but most Star Wars games do this, and it's always cool to see a new style of game in the Star Wars universe. Being able to embody one of these Republic Commandos and see the Clone Wars from a different perspective is a really cool game idea. The Clone Wars TV series gives you way more time with the clone troopers in and out of battle, so it's really neat to see more of that here, especially with the fact that it starts you awakening as a clone baby, seeing snippets of your early life and training before being deployed to the war on Geonosis. A really cool intro for Star Wars fans and a really unique feel compared to any other Star Wars game I've played or how they've started. Republic Commando has Star Wars music in it, and sound effects, and based on some of the really subpar Star Wars games I've played in the past, music and sound effects can really elevate some basic gameplay. Not that Republic Commando is too basic, but trying to play this game on the Steam Deck or Switch with the sound kind of low is a whole different experience than playing it with headphones on or playing on the TV. The sound effects, music, all make the encounters feel way more intense and engrossing in this game. I remember playing, not finishing, the Jedi Knight Jedi Academy game on PC with my brother, and your lightsaber just chops arms off enemies all the time, as would probably happen with a giant laser sword that can cut through blast doors. But most Star Wars games that I can remember just have you whack enemies with your lightsaber as you slowly deplete a health bar. A definite toning down of violence in the franchise's games, so I was really surprised when this game starts up and you stab an enemy with your Assassin's Creed style wrist blade, and they just fall apart into bits, with your visor getting covered in alien goo or motor oil if you're fighting a droid. With your high-tech visor, it then cleans off using some space-age lasers so you can see again and continue the fight. This game's actually kind of intense, as it sees you on the front lines fighting up close and personal, heading out to assassinate enemies as they try to escape in their ships. I was surprised by how much they do in this game to make you feel like you're a trooper and this is a war, not just some casual romp with glowing swords. Your main weapon in this game is the DC-17M modifiable blaster rifle, which can transform between an assault rifle, sniper rifle, and kind of a grenade launcher by attaching and detaching different pieces. This looks really cool visually, and is way more unique than just swapping a weapon and pulling them in and out of frame. My only question is, where are they storing all these loose little pieces to transform the guns? I understand holsters and straps for multiple guns maybe are a pain, but is this really saving you any space at all? Because it's definitely not saving you time when the animations show you having to assemble and disassemble these space guns over and over in the middle of battle. And while I do think this is really cool, I did feel like it was a little too slow to change weapon types, maybe intentionally. Luckily, you can switch to a special weapon or pistol way quicker, but in most cases, they aren't the most useful choice. Another thing I like was the way you stumble upon each of your squad members, one by one as you make your way through the first campaign. And you gain a new type of squad interaction with each one, which is a really nice introduction to them and the mechanics. First being able to hack doors, then gaining sniper positions and more with each member. You, the boss, call out specific tips and tricks to the squad as you make your way through the first campaign, and past that. These callouts I think are really meant for you, the player, to hear and use, but provide a cool way to mask tutorials and or tips as time goes on.
Those things tried to drill my head. Deltas, I think I just found out what happened to 6-2. Some kind of scavenger droid. Keep your eyes out for static.
Especially since it wouldn't be realistic for your squad members to be giving you advice as their squad leader in the scenario. At any point, you can hold the command button to issue commands like Form Up, which has all the squad members follow you, Search and Destroy, which triggers them into being extremely offensive, and Secure Area, which has them hold a position that you've marked. plus the ability to blanket cancel any current orders. You can also press the button while aiming at a specific enemy to focus all squad fire until that enemy goes down. It also shows a health bar, which is really helpful, and this is the command I use by far the most. Then there's the contextual orders that you can give. Like when you're at a door, you can command your squad to blow open the doors, which draws attention but does some damage to the enemies inside. Or slice, aka hacking in the Star Wars universe, the doors open, which lets you sneak in. During most combat encounters, you can order a squad member to take up a sniping perch or throw grenades from behind cover. And in very specific story places, you can order a commando to plant a bomb. All this is surprisingly easy to manage with the one button, and you're able to keep track of it all with this great interface in your visor. In the bottom left, it has indicators that show who's talking, where they are, what their health is, and their current command if they're following one. It's a really sleek interface, actually, that gives you a ton of insight into your squad at a glance. But even with all this really unique and innovative squad stuff for the time, there are some things that I disliked, starting with the blatant insubordination of my squad.
Get yourself some Vector, Commando.
Retrieving it, sir.
Evaluate sector.
Yes, sir.
Let's move on.
Yes, sir. Holding on.
Sometimes it just felt like my squad was either flat out ignoring my calls to be revived, or they didn't want to leave the safety of cover to actually come and get me. You see, when you go down, you don't immediately restart at a checkpoint. You'll lay there dying, and you can choose to have your squad continue with their current orders that you've given, or come rush to rescue you. Or you can also manually restart at the checkpoint. But even the times when I would ask them to revive me, more often than not, they either died getting to me, or just never seemed to even come try and get me at all. And sure, maybe I'm in a bad situation and there was no way they were gonna revive me, but a lot of times I just lay there dying, calling for help, and then after a few minutes would end up restarting, or they would all die and I'd restart. Other times in normal battles, they just stand around taking damage and dying over and over, as you fight through battles alone, in between constantly reviving your squad mates. I just didn't find the squad AI to be the smartest or that helpful in a lot of cases, but you can probably get around this by issuing better commands than I did. I was always out of ammo in this game, and not in the kind of fun or intentional feeling way where you're having to be deliberate with your shots and ammo use. In between almost every combat encounter, there's just a huge pile of ammo that refills all of your weapons, and a back to dispenser to refill your health. But as the game goes on, stronger enemies are such damage sponges that you end up emptying ton or all of your ammo into them, which seems to do very little damage. I ended up being forced to use your infinite ammo pistol more than anything else in the game, and it's slow and boring. While it technically can't run out of ammo, it takes a while to recharge if you do shoot it fast enough, so it's not even a pea shooter you can really rely on consistently. Maybe I'm just bad at aiming, but I ran through ammo so quickly on so many of these spongy enemies, and it did annoy me how often I just had no ammo, no grenades, and it felt like I just walked over a huge pile of ammo seconds ago. The design of the levels is really linear, and you end up going from just point to point, hallway to hallway through the whole campaign. It felt very much like corridors filled with enemies. There are definitely some set piece moments that are really cool and break up the monotony, but the objectives pretty much are just go here, shoot something, or go here, detonate something, and move on. Again, there are some places where they vary it up, like the derelict ship that has a creepy vibe as you explore it and kind of don't run into enemies in the first half. But then it just devolves into hallways of enemies soon enough. Also, with the introduction of different ways to break doors, loud or quiet, I thought there would be some mechanics about using stealth or choosing how to engage the enemies, but that door breach is the only real example, and it basically boils down, as far as I could tell, to opening the doors and shooting to alert everyone, or opening the doors with a detonation that also alerts everyone. I also wasn't that invested in the story as I went, and I was really hoping I was going to be visiting some classic Star Wars locations, but you only end up going to 3 different places, with the first being Geonosis, followed by my favorite place, the derelict ship, and then Kashyyyk. The briefings are almost always a hologram of someone telling you to go here, do this. Sure, some locations are cool, but I never really felt invested in why or what I was doing until the absolute very end of the game, which actually had some cool stakes and got me really excited to continue on. But it just cuts off in a huge cliffhanger ending and rolled credits way before I expected. Apparently there is a series of books out that cover what was going to happen in a sequel, which was in production, but ended up being canceled. I'm not sure if the books answer all the questions you're left with at the end, or if it's set in the future, but this ending just deflated my enjoyment of this game so much to just hit credits just as the story was finally getting interesting to me. Now, with all that in mind, how did I feel about this game overall, and would I recommend Star Wars Republic Commando as a game that should be on your backlog? I think Republic Commando starts really strong, with you getting snippets of your training, being thrown into the war, meeting up with your squad on the battlefield. It's got the great music, great atmosphere, and I felt pretty immersed in the world from the start. It includes a unique weapon system and interesting squad mechanics, especially for the time. But my frustrations with the AI, enemies that require every bit of ammo to take out, and linear levels all left me feeling pretty medium on this game overall. Then just the story is getting interesting and you're growing attached to your squad and the stakes increase, it just rolls credits. I sat there shocked that it ended so suddenly and honestly felt like I'd only played half a game. And there was maybe a second disc I should put in to finish it. These videos are meant to see if a game after all this time is worth going back to play today, and because of all of this, I feel like Star Wars Republic Commando lands in the no category, and I wouldn't really recommend you add it to your backlog. It's not a bad game, but it was just so disappointing for me overall, with a lot of promise up front, then never delivering on anything more interesting as it went on. If you're a diehard Star Wars fan, maybe you'll get something more out of it than I did, and it's possible that AI requires more hand-holding or better commands, and I just didn't know how to command my squad to their full potential, because I'm not a strategist. But as a Star Wars fan myself, this really didn't live up to my expectations, and frankly, I feel like somehow I'm missing something key about this game, as I always hear it mentioned so fondly by those who played it. Also, because this video is ending on a bit of a downer, I'll throw out my normal message that my opinion on this game is not meant to tarnish any fond memories you have of playing this, and if you love this or still love this game, please tell me why in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your experience and talk about the parts that I also really liked. If you do want to check out Star Wars Republic Commando, thankfully it's an older game that's readily available to play on almost everything. If you're looking for it on Xbox, the classic original Xbox release is available digitally for purchase on any Xbox One or Series systems for $9.99. And it's received some enhancements with 60 FPS support listed on the Xbox One X and Xbox Series consoles. A Switch port was also released on April 6, 2021, which brings widescreen support and maybe some other features. I couldn't find a full list, and it's available for $14.99. The PlayStation 4 also received that same port with probably some other upgrades and is backwards compatible if you're looking to play it on the PS5. And lastly, Steam has the same classic copy available that launched on March 1st, 2005, still out there for $9.99. It's always great when a game people remember fondly is still available and easily playable on all these consoles. But that's it for this episode of Backlog Busters. Have you played Star Wars Republic Commando? What did you think? Is it a must-play game in your opinion, and does it deserve to be on others' backlogs? Am I missing something great about this game? Do I need to watch a lore explainer to really appreciate the story that's there, or am I just bad at squad strategy and that's the main draw of this game? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to talk about it. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions for what game you think I should clear off my backlog next, and I'll work to make a video on it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that little thumbs up button and subscribe. And if you want to get alerted whenever I get done editing my next video, don't forget to hit the bell icon. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and see you in the next video.